We'll call the meeting to order.
Gavel.
They think it could be good.
Just using Mike's hand knock over here.
It's in the cake.
Yeah.
The time
Down on it.
both have been.
All right, would you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item on the agenda is the minutes. Get a chance to review them.
Acceptance.
Second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. All right, next up is public comment. So I know tonight we're a little bit limited on time, so I'll ask the public if they are making comment, can we limit it to about 3 minutes or so? Because we're going to end the meeting at 6:30 tonight. So we want to give the Board of Ed some opportunity here, but yeah, of course.
Try and speak loud.
It's not gonna hurt. Use them, mic.
Yeah.
Maybe Heather, turn your.
Good evening. I'll try and keep this bigger than this, but pretty sure I'll get there. My name is Mark Migliaccio. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a proud Granby resident, taxpayer, and a concerned citizen. My wife and I moved here about 20 years ago. We raised our 3 boys here. Each of them attended Granby schools. Athletics was an integral part of their education, taught them many lessons that did not necessarily get taught in the classroom, from which they developed many of the traits necessary to be valuable and productive: teamwork, respect, pride, striving for excellence, compassion, sportsmanship, grace. Furthermore, for those of you who don't know, I'm the president of the Granby High School Football Supporters. We're the booster club for the Granby Football Bears football team. Several members of the board, either past, present, or just members of the football community, are here tonight, and I thank them for that. GHSFS has been in existence for 18 or so years. I've held the position of president for 7 or so years. We estimate that since its inception, we've contributed no less than $700,000 to the Granby Board of Education or the football team to assist in the funding of the program. The money's been raised through the generosity of our community, many of whom are here tonight. A benefit of living in Granby for such a long time is that I know what it's like before the turf athletic complex. I know when there was a cow pasture called Aaron's Park, which was used as a football and lacrosse field. I knew when the track meets could not be held at the high school. I knew when soccer and field hockey were played on an uneven field complete with divots, ruts, bumps, weeds, and bare spots. I saw the embarrassment of our Granby athletes and their families when other schools would come here, saw our substandard facilities, and I also saw the jealousy that our players had when they go to other facilities which have bleachers and lights and tracks. Fast forward to the past 10 or so years, since the field and track have been put in, there have been few things that have made me more proud than when we go to a game at Granby Memorial High School and visiting teams, players, parents, and even CIAC officials come here and tell me, wow, you guys have great facilities, you put on a great game day, your athletes are just the best. I will submit to you that what I'm about to say cannot be refuted. The track and field at GMHS has a greater impact on the student body and the community than any other room or class or area on campus. Demographics indicate that the current student population at the high school is 545 students. This year, there are 289 athletes that use that track and field. It's 53% of the student population, and I would venture to guess that that percentage exceeds any other activity, event, or class at the school. Keep in mind, it's not just about the athletes in the games. There's a substantial number of students beyond the athletes themselves that assist and support the teams and the events. The fans in the stands, the band, the student managers, the ball boys and girls, the videographers, the scorekeepers, and the like. Over the course of the school year, games and contests on that track and field attract more students and community members than any other event or activity at the school. The media, NBC 30, WFSB, and the Hartford Courant come to Granby because of what happens at the athletic field and the track. If sports were not on those fields, the school district and the town would have little statewide media coverage. And when the high school is not in session, evenings and weekends, there are people, countless people there, students, families, groups of friends, walking, running, just hanging out. Nowhere else on the community. Notwithstanding the maintenance and the upkeep the track and field requires, the issues the town is currently facing is unfortunate. It appears that there is a prudent and fiscally responsible solution has been found, although it does have a large price tag. I'd like to thank Superintendent Burke and her team for putting that together. I'm confident that if the necessities and benefits of the project and its commensurate expense are clearly conveyed to the voters, this well-thought-out plan and course of action will be accepted. I might even say it would be embraced. I urge this board to put this matter to a vote and the town referendum after thoroughly and transparently explaining the situation to the voters. Please feel free to call on me as the president or any members of Granby High School football supporters for any help. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, we will close public comment. Or is it anyone online? All right. We will shift over to the Board of Education presentation. So I know we had a couple.
Catherine has a presentation for us, and we do start with an overview of the track and just the answers to some of the questions that the committee posed last week.
Okay.
Or 2 weeks ago. So as we started off yesterday, or last time we were together, I'm sorry, feels like just yesterday. These are the Board of Education capital priorities. Both the safety and security program at just over $1 million and the central office roof replacement are being funded in other ways, or the roof has been completed already. We will primarily be talking to CPAC regarding the turf, track, and field replacement, which we went through in quite a good amount of detail last time we were together. And today we hope to start the conversation around the middle school building renovation. Additionally, we are looking at a floor replacement at Wells Road School, and we are in desperate need of storage for our facilities and maintenance. Just to recap where we started last time, this is an aerial footage of our current stadium, field, and track from just about 3 weeks ago. You can see that there are 3 areas of concern, 2 that are quite large at 148 feet by 13 feet, 77 feet by 13 feet. Those are primarily just along the edge of the field. And then we did have a 3rd spot that required a quick repair in order to maintain our field use during the current fall season, which is a very busy time for both football and soccer in particular. That's about an 18-inch repair that was necessary. And interestingly, you can see it from the aerial view. But we do walk the field just about daily, Carl, to ensure that we're not noticing any additional sinkholes, but visible to the eye, there are increasing challenges with the field each day. Next slide, please. We looked at a variety of options, which we went through in detail at the last meeting. However, overall, our proposed solution is the option called post-tension. This would involve essentially rebuilding the base of the turf field by pouring concrete to level the field and reinforce the areas that are sinking. This option does come in at just over $5 million. Our initial estimate was at about $4 million. However, having learned that we did in fact need to dig down a significant depth for the entirety of the field, going down 10 feet or so across the entire field was not possible. This option with the post-tension base would allow us to have a 25-plus year warranty it's the most viable solution for a long-lasting turf field. We would certainly have to replace just that turf layer on the very top, but the rest of it would really be there for all of our lifetime. So this is the proposal to CPAC for consideration. Next slide, please. Just to summarize, and again, there's a detailed plan on our homepage of the Granby Public Schools website that outlines this in great detail. Members of the board had a hard copy provided for them last time we were together. We are mostly focused on stadium, field, and track. However, you see the list of additional improvements. These are all items that have been advocated for and even planned for in great detail since 2008. Of note, we are most interested in the LED lights because we do believe that it will provide significant energy savings, which equals cost savings. It would allow the lights to go on immediately versus the experience that we have now where you have to flick them on and wait a number of minutes for them to sort of warm up. Additionally, we talked about press box and bleachers. And then Field 2 was installed at the same time as Stadium Field. And so we do know that Field 2 is also beyond its life expectancy and does require replacement. We have not yet done any additional testing. We are going to talk about that in just a moment because that was a question from the committee last time we were together. This is a much more typical field replacement, and you see the cost estimates there, under $1 million. We'd also proposed a scoreboard for this field and perhaps some netting, which would really allow multi-use of the location at one time. Next slide, please, Catherine. In addition, the master plan for our fields, which was presented last time we were together, includes significant changes to our baseball and softball fields. To install turf for those locations would be between $2,850,000 and $3,450,000. We also suggest lighting and scoreboard. Both of these fields, in particular the baseball field, has had a lot of challenges. The irrigation is poor. The elevation of the field makes it difficult, and there's not water out there, which makes it even harder to maintain and to keep the dust at a minimum while the students are playing. The tennis courts are also just over 15 years old. We do try our best to repair them annually, but they are showing their age. To include tennis courts, it would be just over $1 million. There's some options included in the master plan to add walkways and plants to make it more aesthetically pleasing. The big conversation going back to 2008 is the need for bathrooms and water access. The only quote that we have that we could put our hands on is from 2018 for approximately $500,000. We know that it's likely doubled in cost given the rising costs since COVID-19, and we've not yet had a formal quote, but we are going to talk about that in a bit more detail in just a minute. This would allow for bathrooms along the Field 2 and Stadium Field area, and water access and sewer access. Next slide, please. One of the big questions that I get everywhere I am is, if we do the field, how long will it take? Because we don't want to be without our stadium, field, and track. We're expecting it to be about 9 months start to finish. The idea would be that we would come in, the company would come in, certainly not myself, to remove the current track, dispose of all of the lighting and fencing, and excavate and remove as much debris as possible. This would likely happen as soon as the fall sports season ends. And in all transparency, if we're able to have a successful fall sports season on Stadium Field, we are watching it very closely. I'm not being alarmist when I say that we don't know what the winter is going to bring. With additional frost heaves, we've continued to see that take more wear and tear on the field itself. But in the ideal scenario, we would be able to start this project right after the last home game, sometime near the end of November, mid-November, and then they would begin to set up for the installation, including drainage. Likely the winter would interrupt the process, and then as soon as there is enough of a thaw, they would start up again. We would be without the field for the spring and the summer, with the goal of being back on the field for the following fall season. This is a, ideal timeline, but certainly we live in New England. Weather patterns and snow conditions could disrupt that timeline. Last time we were together, there were a number of questions that the committee posed, and so Krista Gray, Director of Facilities, and myself worked to seek out as many answers as we could. You had asked about testing. Chris, I think I'll ask for you to answer this first one. Is geotechnical testing recommended for Field 2? And if so, what is the estimated cost and timeline?
Sure. So in speaking to who we used in 2022 and last year, Haley and Aldrich, who came out and did the additional sites, had a discussion with them about the proposal and their thoughts on the post-tension, and they were proponents of it, and they said they've seen it at many places, including professional sports stadiums such as the NFL, and they said it certainly would last several lifetimes. They also said they booked several months out, so they would be available to come out again and do additional testing. They don't feel they need to do quite as much, a smaller area, probably about half, because they'll get a good idea on site of what that secondary practice field looks like. But they said, depending on how our winter is, as soon as the snow's gone from the ground, and it doesn't even have to be completely unfrozen with the machinery that they use to drive down the 10, 15 feet, they're thinking they could maybe get in there March and do the additional testing and have the results in a couple of weeks. So we really would be looking at probably half of what was done this past summer. And again, as a reminder, I think somebody had asked why we just didn't have it done this summer. Unfortunately, it took them about 3 full days, and that was them coming in at 5, 6 in the morning, working till dark at night. And it's all their crew could afford for a timeline to come on such short notice. They usually book 5, 6, 7 months out, but knowing the emergency of this, they just simply didn't have the time. It takes over an hour to an hour and a half to move the machinery every time they're going to do a hole, so it just wasn't feasible to get to the practice field, but they certainly are going to be willing to come back out in the spring for us.
And our best estimate was that it would be around $15,000 or less,
Yes.
because we consider we need to do about half the holes. Are there any additional follow-up questions on that testing?
And so this is Haley and Aldrich is doing this work, or is it?
Haley and Aldrich is the engineering firm that does the geotechnical boring and testing and provides the results to us.
And they're saying they put 3 or 4 months out?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm in the business, and I think they're pulling your leg.
Yeah,
but
they
that's
said
okay.
they couldn't get to us before January 1st, and at that point, they may as well look till March.
Okay.
So.
Nope, I'm still on that slide, Catherine, sorry. We talked a bit last time about access to town water and sewage, because we did see evidence from a 2008 athletic field report that this had been a consideration. It was abandoned due to the cost of running pipe and getting sewage and water. Chris, you were able to review files. You want to just give us a little bit of an update on that and where we are at this point?
Sure, we reached out to the DPW and City Water Department to kind of get any files they had, any maps of what the water and waste lines look like, so we can really identify what the best plan of attack would be if it was going to be provided. And it looks like on either side, from Salmon Brook and 187, we would have options. We didn't explore from, say, the high school, the shortest route from the high school over to the area of the snack shack where the bathrooms might go. But it sparked some good conversations with the DPW to kind of look at a little bit deeper dive into this to see how we can collaborate to look at what might this envision a workload, vendors, and I would lean on discussions with Mike further and Kirk to collaborate on that.
So our ideal location for the bathrooms would be near the current snack shack. It's a little bit closer to Field 2, but it would allow nice access. We have standing portable bathrooms there now. They're an eyesore. They smell no matter how often we maintain them. Certainly the caliber of the athletic, facility that we have, hard, standing facility for bathrooms that are ADA accessible, would be an excellent addition to that area. We think that the cost also is dependent on our relationship in working with the town of Granby. And, we're not going to be able to get a private vendor to come in and do this project. It's a little bit bigger than that. So I reached out to Mike Walsh, and we'll continue those conversations at another time.
And if I could ask real quick, Carl, what are we currently paying a year for the porta potties we're using?
It's 10,000?
10,000 a year?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I don't understand that answer. The cost of providing the water infrastructure to where the restrooms would go, what more do we have to explore to get an estimate?
Well, we've just received maps this week, and a couple vendors I reached out to in general, just some plumbers, said they're not available to even come out and look at sites till after Thanksgiving. So we just said, well, let's just talk to the city and see what the town rather, and see what the maps look like, just start discussions on what would really be involved, what would be the best route to get wastewater and water supply over to that area.
Because we would, absent something unusual, we would consider it as part of the one project, right? If we're going to tear up everything,
Yes.
wouldn't we include it in that project?
Yeah, that's why we're proposing it now, because of the depth we have to dig the field and the equipment that's going to be out there. This is the ideal time to do that work. We have a very superficial estimate, as I said, from 2018, which was for about $500,000. But my concern is that it's a superficial estimate. There's no evidence of where the water runs, and some individuals that I've spoken to that were involved back when that plan was developed explained that that project was looking at, adding sort of a field house, bathrooms off the community gym at the school. And that's not really going to solve our issue of having access from the stadium field. So, it's certainly not something that I have a lot of knowledge in, and in talking these last couple of weeks since our last presentation. Mike, I don't know if you have anything you can add. You said we'd have to look
Yeah,
a little
let me
deeper.
not specifically address the bathrooms, but kind of a bigger question that I suspect CPAC will grapple with, certainly maybe not tonight, but in the future. When you look at kind of reverse engineering the process, you're likely to ask the voters for a certain amount of money. That question that goes to the voters comprises two components. One is the appropriation, how much are you able to spend? And then the second part of the question is how much are you able to bond? Sometimes they're the same numbers, they don't necessarily have to be the same numbers. So if you're looking, not specifically on this slide, but on the previous slide, there was a whole lot there. There was $5.5 million for this new track facility. And then by my count, about another $1.5 million for other things just on the left side of the slide. If you want this ramp and that ramp and so forth. If you move to the right of the slide, you had like another $500,000 there on field 2. So really what CPAC needs to do after they listen to all of this is size what is it we're doing and what is it we're going to ask the voters to do. I would remind everybody too that the cost of issuing a bond,
Can you go back to that
simply
slide, Catherine? Back again?
Yeah, one more. So that's where the numbers on the left side, actually even
Back again.
one more.
Thank
So you've
you.
got the 5.5 and everything under it, by my account on the high side is about $1.5 million. So if you were to do the left side, field and track and additional improvements, that's about a $7 million question. You also need to add about $100,000 to $150,000 for lawyer costs, the publication of the official statement, and so forth. So when CPAC grapples with this, the voters need to understand that here's what you get for X amount. And then what we have to do and again, in the interest of transparency, we want to communicate this as best we can. But this is where there is often a disjoint between what we approve and then what we build. We, in every case, whatever the voters approve, depending on what's put to them, we will always value engineer as best we can to get the lowest cost. We will always bid. But as the superintendent mentioned, post-COVID, when you're taking state money, you're looking at prevailing wage. When you're working on a job like this post-COVID, invariably there's three types of contracts. You can do a lump sum, and you can get less for your money, but you'll know that that budget will never be exceeded. It's guaranteed in the contract. Or you can hire an owner's rep, and you can go out there and build create the trades yourself, the contracts. So after CPAC gets done with their work, there's a whole lot of work that the town does to bid this, to value engineer it, and there may candidly be trade-offs. If the costs of the track, which we thought were $5.5 million, come in at 5.7, invariably some additional improvements will have to be tweaked. Now, again, I know I'm out in front of this thing, but I wanted to explain it so everybody considers it. The one thing I can guarantee for you is the amount you put to voters will not be the cost of the project. It will be either less or more, but it certainly won't be that precise. If it is less, that's great news. The money that is left over from the bond can go back and repay the bond so that the debt service is a lesser amount. If, however, there's an amount above the cost, we need to seek another appropriation from both the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance. That could be done in a future allocation of a small cap. But again, you try to size these things so that we get it right the first time, but right is really subject to a lot of vagaries. The market conditions, how many vendors are out there. You can have, if this particular track takes 1.5 years to build, and they decide they want to build through the snow season, and then we get 4 feet of snow, there's probably a provision in the contract to charge you for clearing the snow off, and that'll be $100,000. So all of these things need to be factored in, and we need to be conscious of this, because while we're transparent with everybody, what is decided by CPAC compared to what is built may be subtly different. And that I've seen in the past has caused some consternation among voters.
So, just before we leave the slide, I guess this is the point I wanted to make again. Those estimates on the left-hand side do not contemplate any dollars for even the infrastructure for the sewer and water for the bathrooms, right?
Correct.
Correct.
This is
Okay.
just from the company Field Turf, who
Okay.
put the proposal together to remediate the fields before the discussion of bathrooms,
Okay.
which is out of their trade purview.
Do they have or build in contingency into their numbers? They outlined, or?
No, not these numbers do not include a contingency.
Okay.
That would be something we would
We
consider.
would want
though,
to
as
build
we
that in
build
for the
our-
bond request.
Okay.
But the
Yeah, so
company
they
doesn't-
didn't,
no.
they just.
No.
And typically, we're talking about 10% of the amount, so you're looking at another 500,000 there.
Yep.
And was there a disregard already of not attaching the bathrooms to the backside of the lower gym?
So at our first CPAC meeting this year, we just proposed the idea of, while we're doing all of this work, it would be, it's our thought that it should be considered to add in bathrooms. We have not done any deep dive into the cost, to Mark's point, other than a 2018 estimate that we had on record. And we have not gone any further than to look at what were some of those original designs, why were they abandoned at the time, and what were the different locations that were options, because rather than starting from scratch, I think we start with, some of what had been done before us. But we realized that we need an expert opinion, and we need to work closely with the town about, running sewer lines and water, and just like you would if you were building a home, you have to have all those kinds of things.
There's one other comment I would like to make, and clearly the board and the town have a very solid working relationship. But oftentimes with projects this size, where additional improvements are required, It's not unusual to bring in an architect or an engineer. However, you're talking about substantial costs, 100 to 200,000.
Right.
They will tune up the number much better than our abilities are. However, that's additional cost to the town. And in all candor, sometimes the engineers over-engineer things, so you end up a little more than you need to. So, again, we look
No
to
disrespect
CPAC.
any of you engineers at the table.
We, certainly no disrespect, but we look to CPAC to strike that balance of what is enough, what should be embedded in that, and will the taxpayers approve it? And then can we build it for that same money?
Right, and that was suggested to us on the school side when if we get to it tonight, you'll see we've started the evaluation of the middle school. We did engage with, a company that would be able to assist us with better understanding that process. And during that conversation, when we just mentioned that we were presenting, a turf track and field, they said, ooh, you might need help if you're looking at bigger systems, water, drainage, And so I think that that's all for this committee's consideration, and if you direct us to learn more and get more of those details, then we will certainly do so. Okay.
I guess, one last, forgive me if you mentioned this, but so the snack shack today has no running water, it's just a building of electricity?
There's a water fountain. My knowledge is that's the only accessible water. It's pumped.
We bring the water in. We bring the water in, yeah.
Okay, so it's just a,
Yeah. Yeah, snack shack with running water would be nice. Yeah. Because I see some familiar faces, yeah. Okay, Catherine, could you go ahead again? I'm sorry, to the Q&A slide right there. We also were asked to look a little more closely at the costs related to the baseball field and the softball field. That's the last question on the slide. We could see that the recommendations from both the most recent master plan report, which you had a copy of, and the 2008 report, which we brought with us last time and referenced, the fields were in disarray each of those times, and the experts that sort of assessed, for a better word, the fields felt that in order to get them to a better playable condition, it would have to be professionally regraded, that we would need to look at the soil that we're dealing with so that we'd know how to properly treat it and what type of seeding, all of that. The irrigation system would need a complete replacement. We would absolutely need water access. And most importantly, in every report we could find historically, and certainly what our current experience is, that the field is overused. The baseball field is used for a soccer field all fall, and then it is used, as our baseball field, freshman, JV, varsity, youth teams, weekends, it just gets an awful lot of use. And so, Chris, you can certainly speak to it better than I can, but the wear and tear on the field really doesn't allow for it to regenerate and let the grass grow and do the things that we know it needs to. We just have such a short season to get the field ready for the spring from the time that the winter is letting up. Is there anything you want to add to?
No, what I saw from the 2008 report was just across the board, overuse. There's no resting time. There's no time to reseed, to aerate and properly irrigate, which we're seeing with my staff's limited availability to work on the baseball field. And I've seen it when it rains, and we try and line and we try and bring in supplements, and there's certainly all challenges for a small group of people to accomplish on a regular basis.
And so that's why turf is being suggested, in particular for the baseball field, because it doesn't need any downtime. It bounces right back from the weather. And I skipped over one, I apologize. The LED lighting, we spoke to a number of individuals in the field. We had an energy audit suggested to us. We reached back out to that company. And we were told that 70 to 80% less energy is needed to power the LED lights. and that the reduced cost in bulb replacement and repairs also save dollars. And we were told to expect to recover the cost of the project in a few years. So I think that's pretty good return on the investment for LED lighting. In addition, it's really difficult to use our current lights, and so this would be a improved use for everyone's experience as well.
So is that 2 to 3 years projection just for the LED replacement? Because then there was also the ask to add on.
Just for the replacement of what we
Yeah.
currently have. Anything else on these questions here? Okay, Catherine, the next slide, please. So there was a considerable amount of conversation about, is this a reimbursable project? And so we did some more research. I reached out to a contact at the State Department of Ed at DAS. And essentially what it comes down to is maybe. There's a lot of possible ways that this decision could go. So a turf field can be reimbursed, as Mike Walsh had found quickly for us last time, as a part of a larger school construction project. That means that it needs to be a priority grant. Priority grants have special qualifications in order to be defined as a priority grant, and more hoops to jump through. The reimbursable rate for the project would be 50% of our reimbursement. And so I know it's a little small on here, but our 2026 general contract reimbursement is 46.43%. It is higher than we thought that it was. This was just updated a couple of months ago by the school building department. And so that would mean that the components of the turf, track, and field that are reimbursable would be reimbursed at a rate of 23.21%. However, when you read through the document, and I did send it electronically with the agenda for your further reading, there's a whole section on ineligible costs. And so when you read through this, it does state site regrading, ordinary resurfacing, and reseeding are ineligible for reimbursement. It also states that athletic facility lighting, athletic facility parking, and artificial turf are ineligible. However, and Mike Walsh, you can probably help me with this, we know school districts that have received state grants for turf projects. It does happen. So there's a lot of red tape. I am very much new at navigating this process, so I would look to people with much more experience than myself. But if we read through the policy, my best answer is maybe we would get some reimbursement. The challenge of doing this, of applying for it as a part of a priority grant application with the middle school renovation as an example, is that we would have to adhere to the priority grant timeline. The priority grant timeline is a lot slower, frankly, than we would like and potentially than we need for the turf to remain, viable on our campus. We would put the question to the voters in April. We would need to submit our priority grant by June 30th, and then the state would have an entire year to review. And it's not like they come back sooner than that. They have a year, they take a year. They pose questions. It's a lengthy application. My understanding is that 1 year from June 30th of 2026, we would find out if we receive the priority grant and what components are in fact reimbursable. And so we would be looking at a minimum of 2 years out to do the turf, track, and field if we decide to attach it to a priority grant for another project. Mike, please correct me if some of the things that I've said are misrepresenting, because I am brand new to learning this process.
All of that is accurate. I would say, again, depending on the recommendation from CPAC, you probably want to go for the gross amount so that we can continue to address an extraordinary problem while we concurrently seek the priority grant. And then we'll simply not issue bonds for the eventual amount of the priority grant.
Right, and so we could then start the project sooner.
Right.
However, it means that we do so knowing that we may not be reimbursed at the amount that we estimate upfront. Is that correct? That's how it was explained to me.
Right.
Okay. Questions about that?
And that's not unusual for us, right? We often move forward on these projects with some risk that the state won't reimburse everything in the project, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Because the bridges came back like that and then more, and then we were able to do more down
Yeah.
down the road.
They
But-
changed the program too.
Yeah.
With the bridges, but the schools, it's always certain things they don't reimburse for.
Okay. The department has been under a lot of scrutiny lately, so there's a lot of hoops to jump through. I'm sure that's always been the case, but I certainly understand that it would be worth it to try to have some of the project reimbursed, but I wanted to make sure that you had the numbers. But if you look at the grid, and I know it's small, but I did provide that to you electronically as well. Granby, School District 56, if you go all the way across, in 2020, now, of course, we also know that costs have risen considerably, but in 2020, our general construction reimbursement was only 37.8%, and now we're up to 46. So it's a good sign that they're keeping pace with some of the inflation of these costs. But we certainly know that these projects are quite expensive. You can see a list when you click on this link. You can see a list of all of the priority grant projects that are currently with the state. I encourage members of the committee to take a look because the numbers are staggering. For elementary schools, 50 million, middle schools, 89 million. I mean, it's pretty amazing to see what the costs of some of these programs currently are. Any additional questions related to the turf track or field or and also we would appreciate any direction for next steps, what more you'd like to hear from us related to this particular project. We are prepared to begin talking about the middle school, but I assume we'll have to circle back as we learn more about this project as well. Are there any questions at this time that you want us to take back?
Do you think it would be worth it to have either like our state rep give us more information or just hold?
I don't know that
Yeah.
any of our state reps could give us any more detail than the superintendent Mike just did. There might be another separate, like, grant funding, like the way we did the emergency communication system.
Yes, there's, over at the Capitol, there's 3 pools of money aside from pool grants. They're afforded to the minority party, the majority party. They're broken up between the Senate and the House on both sides, the majority and the minority. And then obviously the governor, who controls the agenda, has the largest pool. There is, like our radio project, there is an opportunity periodically to seek out some of that money. But usually they would say, work through the priority grant, it's already in place, as opposed to a set aside. So it's not impossible, but it would be a hard lift for this.
Yeah, last year I filled out the forms and wrote a compelling letter to our state reps. I didn't hear back. I followed up with emails and calls, and I believe our board chair did as well. Unfortunately, there were other priorities, I'm sure, but my understanding is that there is often grant funds available. It's just a matter of that individual legislator needing to, I don't know, I want to say make a deal, although that's probably not the
I
right
don't
way to
think
say
they've
it.
done any of those grants. Have they recently, since we
well,
did the,
So the governor has reminded everybody that the state is on a bond diet. And there, as opposed to a monthly bond meeting, it's been quarterly or as infrequently as every 6 months. So, and it would start with a strong recommendation from Senators Kissel and Representative Anderson. But again, there's limited pools of money and there's fewer and fewer bonding agendas being offered by the governor.
Would that be a way, though, that members of the community that are here tonight could support this project in letter writing or emails to representatives?
That never hurts. I certainly don't want to lead anybody down the road that more letters means more bonding. That's unfortunately just not the way the General Assembly works. But I would encourage, we'll take any letter and we'll use it to our advantage.
Next slide, please, Catherine. Thank you. Any other questions or anything for us to follow up on for track and turf field?
No.
Okay. All right. So the next priority for the Board of Education to be considered by CPAC is the needs for Granby Memorial Middle School. We are proposing a renovation to the current facility. The property is a 2-story building. It's just over 75,000 square feet, and it was constructed in 1992. Many of us think of 1992 and think that was just yesterday. However, the building is starting to show its age. As you can see on this initial slide, we do have aging infrastructure. The core systems, the mechanicals, are original to the building, and they are well beyond their life expectancy. We'll share that in greater detail in a few moments. We do have some concerns, and we want to bring to your attention that, as you are aware, all renovations, as soon as we take a hammer to any area of the middle school, we then are required to be compliant with present-day code. And so we do anticipate that would uncover additional costs to update to the current codes from the 1990s earlier code, which we are now in compliance with, but not in compliant with current code. The technology, well, in 1992, the technology that we currently know it did not exist. And so we really are working with a facility that cannot support modern instructional needs for technology integration. You'll see photos that demonstrate that in just a few moments. The classroom learning spaces limit flexibility. They're odd shape and size. Many of our spaces are not compliant with ADA. If we had a child in a wheelchair, they would not be able to access a number of the classrooms and learning spaces in the building. And many of, if not all of our common areas and shared spaces really no longer serve the students when we think about modern learning. Catherine, could you go to the next slide, please? Chris DeGray, our Director of Facilities, is going to walk us through a series of photos and provide some updated information from our visual assessment, which is what we had initially started sharing. You do have a copy of that, the colored photo on the front, and this is a summary of the lengthier copy, which I know some of you do have, and it's all on our homepage, and we're happy to share that again. Chris is going to walk you through some of this. Our goals for tonight are really to just provide you with a visual understanding of where we are currently with the middle school. We do have a number of additional reports that have been conducted, and in the next couple of meetings, we hope to dig into more of those details. But tonight, we just want to sort of set the stage. We knew it was a shorter meeting and give you a visual representation of the current state of the middle school. Okay? All right, Chris.
So first of all, to everyone in the room and guests, possible parents and townsfolk, first thing I want to let you know is all of our mechanical systems are fully running, fully functioning. Our HVAC, our AC, our alarm systems, fire suppression. We follow strict guidelines from the state regarding inspections of our boilers, our fire systems, our lockdown, fire drills, things like that. Everything is operating. It's just old. Some more than others. We get all of our certifications current, from, like I said, elevators, fire suppression, fire marshals, and they're on a regular basis. So anything we need to comply with, we're complying. There's nothing that's a imminent safety risk that is keeping any faculty, staff, students, or visitors at harm every day where sprinklers aren't working or things like that. So I want to be clear. So we engaged with a company this spring to do a facilities condition assessment. And basically what they did, they came with a team of engineers over one of our breaks, and they spent a whole week just kind of doing a visual inspection of the entire space. And that fruits of that was about an 80 to 100 page report. A lot of it pictures, a lot of it historical background, and we handed some of those out at the last meeting. What we did was we made a much smaller amended version of that, and there's some copies in the back if any folks want to take a look at them, that kind of give an overview on an easier to digest, easier to read, color-coded idea of where we're at with some of our mechanicals and where they are at their current age as opposed to what their useful lifespan is. I certainly have had lawnmowers I've kept 10 years longer than I should have, and wasn't surprised the day they stopped working. There's a second sheet that has an overview of our mechanical systems life cycle of industry standards and the ages of them, and we'll get into that. So in addition to that, as many people know, there's now a mandatory indoor air quality mandate by the state of Connecticut that has to be completed in the next 5 to 7 years. And basically each year you have to do 20% of your schools where you have to have a complete 5-year study by an engineering firm, balancing, testing, overview of the entire system. We have decided to make Granby Memorial Middle School the first school to go through that, and we have worked with a vendor in a engineering firm that's going to be conducting that in April, and that will all be public information, will be released. We're wrapping up our indoor air quality tools for schools that we'll be releasing before the end of the year and at a board meeting. And also, going through this, there was a lot of questions about, all these school districts are saying, well, we have somebody come and do this HVAC report, and they say that it's going to be 80,000 or 200,000 or 300,000. What do we do? And the state said, well, that's a good question. So they put together a series of webinars, and they had a company who's very well known, very well respected, called Stematic, put on these webinars to every facilities department for the entire state. And it was a series of webinars to train you in the process, what you should do, who you should employ. I was able to make some connections with them, and they actually came out and they did a brief overview, and on a ventilation checklist, we can do them within our own facility staff, but they came at a greatly discounted rate. Thousands of dollars this normally costs. They came and did it for a few $100s and spent a couple days going through our entire HVAC system, specifically in the middle school, and that portion of the indoor air quality where we only have to pick one school, Kelly Lane, and we have to pick one HVAC unit and just do that as a test sample. They actually did the entire school, and we'll be releasing those results, and it's kind of just an overview, preventative maintenance. So as part of that, we took the opportunity with the school empty to take some pictures. These are some pictures here on the first page of our rooftop units, and I think they speak for themselves. A lot of these are original to the school, which puts them at 33 years old, and an industry standard for rooftop units such as these and all the components is about 20 years. So these are a good 13 years over their life cycle. You can see some of these. They show the rooftop and the building mechanical system, some of the RTUs, which is rooftop units, some of the insulation. We've gone through these over the past 12 years. We're constantly doing HVAC repairs, and certainly we have some great relationships with some local vendors when we have emergencies. We did recently, we were 2 weeks into the school year, and we lost some air conditioning in our band chorus room at the middle school, as well as the cafeteria. They couldn't even estimate a lead time because of everything from tariffs to manufacturing, how long it's going to take to get them. But they certainly said they couldn't get them anytime this fall, but they are on back order. And we're in a cooling season. We've made other accommodations with putting air scrubbers and dehumidifiers where needed to make sure we're keeping air quality priority one. But as you can see, almost all of our HVAC systems, including our RTUs, condensing units, interior air handlers, exterior air handlers, VAV units, exhaust fans, exterior ductwork, DOAs, which are dedicated outdoor air systems, room baseboard unit heaters, electric unit heaters, heat and hot water pipes are all a good 10 to 15 years outside of their current life cycle. If we could go to the next slide.
So I just want to pause for 1 second. The rooftop units and the HVAC, we're testing, we're confident that our air quality is on par with a healthy environment for everyone that works there and our students.
Yes.
However, we do get frequent questions from our staff.
Yes.
And oftentimes, I think what you and I have learned is really because of the age of the units that, it's a little discolored, or we're seeing things that make people feel less, safe, but we've tested the air and it is safe. It is of good quality.
Yes.
The other question I have for you that I think would be important, we often get questions about air conditioning when we talk about HVAC. People have strong opinions about whether or not schools should be air conditioned. They weren't air conditioned when I was in school. Why do we need them air conditioned? Or, wow, I work in an air conditioned office space all day. I couldn't imagine working with 24 little kids and it not being, cool. We currently have about 20% of our building air conditioned for comfort, for temperature. Current standards, though, are what? It's much higher.
It's recommended much higher, and anyone who wants to come in a couple days after commencement and spend time in the buildings with the students in some of these heated areas, even as we get into September, we had quite a few calls for whatever we could do to assist. We hit some 70 and 80 degree days, and certainly the majority of that's during the summer. And I know from my staff working, and we actually have to work on different shifts sometimes because of the humidity in the areas. Wax won't dry for days and days and days. And it's certainly, there's pros and cons, but it certainly can affect the quality. And places that are conditioned, like our band and chorus rooms, we need it for some of our climate control, for some of our instruments, and our IT areas and our server rooms. In areas like our media center, where we have computers, where we have books, that might be subject to issues if you have humidity levels too high. And that's where you really get into it, where you have the climate control. You have humidity too long. Anybody who knows who has a basement has to run a dehumidifier a couple times a month, or during the rainy season, it just gets kind of that odor. But we do have internally a meter that I've used. I've worked for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for 2 state universities for over 15 years, and I went through training for all of those metrics. So we kind of go in, if there's even a hint of a complaint, or like you said, sometimes there's a leak of something brown, but people don't realize there's 6, 7, 8 inches of insulation on a roof, but it's happening the same time a dehumidifier's down, and they think something black is leaking and getting through. So we're very cognizant of that, and on a regular basis, we're going through all the schools and doing general air quality testing with a handheld meter.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Catherine. Go to the next slide.
This is just a brief overview to give you an idea. Like, our infrastructure is right above the ceilings. We just moved some ceiling tiles. There's some cold water, some hot water return lines, just some wires going through. Like, it's a limited space. So when we get to talking down the road about renovation, the real estate is small to kind of navigate around, and where they think they can go straight across somewhere, it might be 2 or 3 or 4 90-degree angles, because you look above some of those pipes and sometimes there's 6 inches of clearance, sometimes there's 3 feet. So that's where, when we talk about the FCA report, it was just a visual inspection. They didn't test, they didn't take any meters, they didn't move a lot of ceiling tiles. So that's when you get into the design phase of it, of what the actual mechanical needs of the building are going to grow once we get into that area.
Thank you.
Next slide. Now we're going to talk a little bit about safety and security. So as part of a separate initiative, the Board of Education is always safety and security is paramount, and we brought up at the last meeting, we are looking at enhancing sprinkler systems, to fire alarms, to lockdowns, to pull stations. Part of that is card access. Certainly anytime you enter a human factor of people leaving with physical keys, there's always a concern. You want to keep the security within the building. So in addition to the lockdown system and installation of additional lockdown pull stations, many of the doors that require access or upgrade to the existing card system, not only for first responder for emergencies, but just for the overall update and safety and security of the building. Next slide, please. One of the things we would look at is to expand the sprinkler system building-wide, and speaking to a couple of vendors, they said, well, to do that, it's going to be a multi-month process. You are going to have to take the building offline. It cannot be occupied when we turn off the sprinkler system. We can only back build the system to marry into the existing system so much when we need to shut it down. And it's what you would think. It's drilling through concrete, trenching to the fire pump house, which we don't currently have, and one would need to be built. There's a lot of infrastructure, and the building couldn't be occupied. A new exterior fire pump house would need to be built and operational for system test and use. And again, currently, we are only at about 20 to 25% of the building has sprinkler systems in place. So from a safety and security point, I know I'd want my child, if he was in this school district, to be in one of those sections. Next slide, please. And then we'll talk a little bit about technology and electrical, and we have a great social media team and communications folks who just went around and took some pictures, and I think these speak for themselves. Kind of have a mix of hanging wires that can create a safety hazard, and most buildings, electrical codes require permanent wiring be installed, hardwired. Raceways run, not hanging freely. Hanging cables are often seen as temporary or unsafe installations and could fail inspections. Anytime a new piece of machinery comes in, we kind of have to audit and look at the breaker system, and sometimes we've had to say no to some people in some of the buildings because it was just too much of an electrical load, and we've had to compromise and say, okay, if we take this out, we put that in. So certainly we'd be looking to upgrade some of our electrical systems. And just from, a standpoint, I have two sons who are, one has already graduated from vocational school, the other one's going through, and, he just got co-op this week, and I'm thinking, I hope he's working in a safe environment where he goes, and they're providing him all the tools of the trade to do his job safely. So certainly, this is an example of things we just want to tighten up and fix.
Chris, the middle school has a wood shop?
Mm-hmm.
It
Yes.
does.
Yeah.
It's original to the building, but it's been retrofitted over the years. There's a bank of 3D printers. It's an awesome, awesome space.
So before I continue, instead of going through 20 or 30 slides and having people forget questions, are there any questions from what you've heard so far?
I guess I had questions on the HVAC.
Yeah.
Maybe, so I think you had mentioned there was standards. I guess, are there state standards with how much the HVAC should be covered? And then I guess where I'm kind of going with that is, you're saying if, we open up and start to do construction, then we need to be compliant. So if we were to do some of the construction, is there an automatic expansion that we would need to go to?
So I'll tell you this, air conditioning is not mandated in K through 12 schools. However, it's seen as more along the line of best practices. Certainly if we start taking apart vents and rerouting things, we're no longer grandfathered in to that space. Mm-hmm. And I'll give you an example from my last job. I worked at Berkshire Community College, and they had a huge theater. They didn't have a single pull station anywhere, and they had no sprinklers. And our curtain was out of asbestos compliance. And the minute we took it down, it took it all out of grandfather, took it all out of code, and then we had to shut it down for a year until we were just there to fix a curtain. And so it's funky. You never know till you kind of get in the weeds, and they may say, well, since you've done this, they're clearly going to want a full new set of air quality testing and indoor air quality, and whatever standards the state was using in 1992 are clearly more different than they would be in 2025 going forward. So that's where I'm leery, where they might say, well, the best practice might be for you to look at this, and we would certainly look for guidance. But that also would be in the hands of engineers and consultants who put all this together, who put all this together and say, this is really what you're going to want to do, and this is the type of expansions you're going to want to make.
Yeah, we're going to give you what we've learned from experts to this point, primarily with a visual inspection. And as I had asked Kevin to have an expert come and speak, because I really think you need to hear clear, transparent answers on some of those things from folks that do school building projects specifically. So I'll make note of the HVAC and air conditioning questions. We can dig into that a little more.
Okay. And I guess maybe as part of that though, because this is also the shelter, right? Are there any, are there any state requirements from like a shelter perspective that you know of?
No, it's, the little I know about this shelter, it meets the conditions of the state. We have the ability to cook there, it's got a backup generator system, we have the ability to shower there, and we have the ability to add cots for sleeping arrangements. So to my knowledge, there's no shelter issues with this facility.
And also as stated on the second sheet, and just for the public's knowledge, all 3 boilers were replaced a year ago and 4 boiler pumps. So from a standpoint of shelter, there are some other issues we'll talk about from a standpoint of there's a storm from here through the spring. The building has brand new working heat.
And the generator just recently kicked in.
Yes.
We just used the generator, not something you use all the time. And so we were pleased it worked.
Yeah, there was a
immediately. There was no
transformer issue, and we conducted a full day of school without anybody knowing other than administration that 100% power was provided to
It's great.
the entire building. And it was a good test for us to get an idea of how
The fuel.
we go through fuel and our connections for if we needed a refill, if it was multi-day.
Excuse me, sprinklers,
Yes, sir.
go back. Did I misunderstand, or are there areas of the middle school that are not sprinkled?
70 to 75% of the middle school does not have a sprinkler system.
So back 32 years ago, sprinkling a middle school was not code required, I guess is what
That's our assumption.
That's
yeah.
our assumption. If you go into the middle school and to the right, the kitchen, because of Ansel fire, the cafeteria, the choir and music room have sprinklers, and a couple other areas. But over 70% of the building currently doesn't have sprinklers.
But the areas that are sprinklered are connected to the overall building emergency alert system.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, sir.
Chris,
Yes.
the 25% you referenced, I thought in here it says like 35%.
Well, it was a visual inspection. They saw sprinkler heads that our staff reported were part of a system. They were going to do an expansion and didn't. So it's more, we would have a better idea once they really get up into the ceiling and look at the whole system. But we did have our current vendor come out and just kind of do a walkthrough. And we haven't had many discussions regarding a quote, but just looking at the system and the water supply system, all they could tell us is we definitely would need a fire pump house to expand any of the fire sprinkler system in the building. And at a later date, they'll do a review of the whole building and an audit.
Do we know now, excuse me, that the school, if we were to go in and start doing things, do we know now that we're required to upgrade to 100% coverage with sprinkler system?
Yes.
The answer is yes, we absolutely will, because I thought the original report said we might.
Well, in speaking to different fire officials, I've been trying to connect with the fire inspector for our town, is when you start working on them, you have to expand to all areas. So we'll get clarification on that, because I can get 20 different answers, but the one for the town is the one that matters the most. So I'll be speaking with Brian.
Can I ask a follow-up question of yours on the HVAC? So I want to make sure I understand. We're doing an air quality report now, right? We will use that to reevaluate the HVAC systems?
Well, so there's two things. Stamatic came in and they said, you have these tools for schools you have to fill out for every school. Everything from waste management to pest control to building. There's an HVAC portion. We're only mandated to pick just one individual random unit and test that. Stamatic came in and tested the entire building just to give us an update and say, hey, here's when you should do some cleaning. Here's maybe a change in how you should cycle out changing filters. That was kind of separate, trying to understand this whole 5-year mandate. Separately, there's a 5-year mandate where by the time we finish this 5 years, every school in the district needs to be tested. You have to bring in a professional design firm who will bring in professional HVAC professionals who will do the testing, the balancing, and they'll provide an air quality report and say, this is your current state, this is what you need to fix. And that's kind of where everybody was getting stuck, saying, well, what if they say it's $800,000 in fixes? Once we know it, we're kind of mandated to make those fixes. And they said they're It's a newer program. They're putting together ideas for grants and reimbursements and things like that, but to still go ahead and at least get the testing done. So that company we've engaged with, Fuss and O'Neill, they're sending a whole team out during April vacation. Then it will be a team of several people specifically to get in and do the actual testing. The other was visual inspections, make sure we didn't have seals, that the heat was getting it where it needed to, the AC was getting where it needed to be. This will be an overview and the actual metrics of this RTU is only performing at 13%, this one's only, so yes, as we go along this process, that's going to actually be a great help in addition to any design or folks we have come in, because it's kind of going to give us a real-time roadmap of what our current HVAC system looks like.
It was at our discretion to pick a school to start with, but all four are required over 4 years. Given in Granby, we only have 4 schools. We had the luxury of doing one a year. We chose the middle school because we felt like it would be something we have to do anyways, and it would give us that additional deep dive into the HVAC system.
So that's what I'm trying to, it seems to me Terracon, in their report, Terracon, I'm sorry, goes to great lengths to warn us that these numbers they've given us are probably not accurate, because if I'm understanding it right,
Yes.
the air quality report may lead to recommendations to significant changes in the HVAC systems
Yes.
that they didn't contemplate.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And then did I hear you say right that, so they're not going to do the report until April? So you're going to, we got projects on now 2 different tracks, because you said earlier you want us to ask the voters in April whether they want to fund the turf, right?
Right, yeah, and so this was part of the separate, again, you've got the indoor air quality report that's due yearly on every school, and then you have the 5-year HVAC report. And so everyone in the state is trying to comply. So these firms are just filling up. Like, I had to beg, borrow, and steal to get them to be able to come out in April to perform this. And that's part of the state mandate. So again, we chose the first school, being the middle school.
Do you feel like this particular assessment is a make or break for the renovations of the middle school?
No, because we know regardless that these are all 10 to
Yeah.
13 years beyond their life cycle. It's just going to help us more with the blueprint. We know they need to be replaced regardless. So I guess it's just going to help us determine how much of the infrastructure, the bones of the inside of the building we can maintain. And maybe it's just RTUs and some venting. But the bigger ticket items, our RTUs, our condensers, all of those are, no matter what happens with this report, they all need replacing.
Thank you.
During the installation of this system, how long will the schools have to be unoccupied?
So, we've had some consultants recently, excuse me, we've had some consultants recently do some walkthroughs of the middle school with us, and there's certainly always a fear of, and several people in the room I've had discussions with have worked through this, of construction ongoing when you're trying to conduct the business of a school day. But they feel that it's unique the way that the building is set up, that there's a possible roadmap, and we will defer to the experts, where it would be limited, where it might not be, albeit for something like a sprinkler system, where it's a get portable trailers or move them into shells or things like that, where they might be able to do it piecemeal in sections, but they're kind of in the infancy of starting to look at the building in those reports, and we're certainly going to lean in on that. But we always want to look at, are we financially responsible, fiscally responsible, but also we want to make sure we keep continuity of the business for the school, and we don't put the students, the staff, the students out as much as possible, knowing we have to do this. So on the forefront, I think we're going to look at all the options to be able to present them all. But they seemed encouraging based on their 2 initial walkthroughs they've done in the past couple of weeks, that it would be possible to do the work in sections, so that it's not, obviously we're not going to get it done in the summer, we're not going to get it done in the winter, with minimal disruption. That's kind of our message to them.
You know, and depending on the scale of the project that this committee decides is, appropriate, we would then look to plan a timeline with a consultant. We wouldn't be doing that on our own. I've worked 2 significant build to new and renovate to new as an administrator in the building, and it's not fun. But lots of times what you do is you makeshift classrooms in the cafeteria, and kids are now eating in their classrooms, and the cafeteria becomes classroom spaces. The gymnasium gets partitions and becomes office space, or, and you're cycling. Because of our proximity to the high school, we would likely look to the high school. Do they have any space that we could access for middle school students to learn while any significant renovations are going on? And your timeline adheres to the school calendar. What can we do over the summer months? What can we do over April break? What can we do over the holiday break? I worked in a district that did a different school calendar. It's awful. I'm not suggesting it, but for like just the middle school, maybe they start 10 days later than everybody else to get to a certain point. It's very stressful and challenging, and I think we're a little ways from that. If we determine renovations are going to happen, and we engage with an architect and design firm and all of that, that's really a year from now. And so right now, we're really just looking to give what are our needs, what is the educational space and mechanicals showing us the potential needs are. What does this committee feel is even appropriate to entertain for the taxpayers, for the other boards to consider, and then what would the appropriate timeline be? So we're taking the perspective of just giving you as much information as we can find to make an informed decision, but that's definitely front of mind for teachers and administrators because it is challenging to teach and learn during a renovation project. You can bring in portable classrooms. There's a lot of options. I saw Brian List here. Maybe we can work out of the why. You look to a lot of creative ways.
Just a quick question. By comparison, is the high school fully sprinkled?
Yes.
And does that have a pump station?
I don't believe it does.
Okay.
That's a good question.
I apologize, I have to run to another meeting. Right,
Tom?
Mike?
You're going to watch the basketball game.
What basketball game?
We only have about 15
No, I thought the women were playing tonight.
I guess maybe I just need clarification. So like this slide says it could take 5 to 7 months.
That's just the sprinkler portion.
But I guess to that, so if you move forward with this, you would essentially have to incur the cost of portable classrooms, right?
Depending on the scope of the project, I mean, we might be able to do sprinklers and, 2 hallways over the summer, and that's only 3 months. Right now we are only looking at about 25% of the building having sprinklers. So I would defer to experts. I can't even guess as to how that would be done, but you're correct. Doing the math, if something takes that long,
Yeah.
we're looking at. But again, that's why we need to engage with experts who manage these projects as their daily job, because I'm not sure. I don't
Yeah,
know
our sprinkler company said they could, if we needed to phase it around the school year. But you certainly would want to get eyes on this pump station house so that whatever work they did do, it will be able to handle the capacity of that. So those might have to happen at the same time.
If the high school doesn't have it, why do you need this? Is it simply a difference in the pressure?
From what I was told, it's just a difference in the location of the water and the pressure.
Don't we have a lot of challenges with water pressure in the high school?
So I can tell you, I spent an entire Sunday a couple weeks ago with the little faucet outside the snack shack, power washing the bleachers, and about 1 o'clock, it just came
No
to a
water.
dribble where
Yeah.
I tried for an hour or two and I just had to do the
Yeah.
rest by bucket and
Yeah, we don't have the
Scrubber.
best water pressure.
it kept going
begin
down.
with,
And that
so-
wasn't, So I switched from from a water pressure washer to just a nozzle, garden nozzle, and it was kind of coming and going and dribbling, so I kind of saw the needs firsthand. Next slide. So here's more current classroom designs. They don't support technology for the classrooms, 2025 and beyond. The current situation can create hazards. Again, we do what we can, always checking breakers. Anytime IT has to install any new equipment, we double check, make sure it can handle the load, that we're using surge protectors and things like that. But in today's schools, a lot of this is just already hardwired into the buildings. Next slide, please. And this is the current technology department office. It kind of looks like a Dorito chip. It's an awkward shape. It doesn't have adequate storage. It's not designed for current technology needs. Not ADA compliant, certainly, and no windows. It's
Yeah.
smaller
Chris,
than
can you
it
go
even
back for a
looks.
second? I want to ask the really stupid
Go
question.
ahead.
So The last picture.
Last slide. Please.
So what you're saying is one of the options in the renovation is to run all the wires through the walls?
Well, no, there's just a lot more wireless. With upgrades, there would be a lot more wireless technology available where you wouldn't need as much of this.
Yeah, so you see the blue wires. We have to hardwire everything. The building, obviously this technology didn't exist then, so it's not a fault of the way that the building was built. But we have to hardwire, and John Lambert said every time we try to add, a screen like this or individual desktop computers, a teacher computer, they have to add wireless, I don't know the right term,
Access
hubs, access points. And in some of the pictures you can see they run them down the wall and then they use that cover. Again, this is not my area of expertise, but it creates, if you look at these slides, and we'll put this up on the website, there's a lot of trips because every corner has the cords that we're trying to run either to the smart boards or the teacher desks because that technology just didn't exist. Also, when you have cords coiled up, it gets warm. We have to turn them off in between classes, so there's a lot of lost instructional time. The technology components of the school are really a necessary, upgrade.
Would they require structural changes to the building, or, that's
I
what I'm asking?
assume so, but I don't know.
You do believe so?
I assume so, but I do not know for
Installation of additional electrical data ports, upgrades to breakers possibly, raceways, things like that, to just kind of clean things like this up.
Okay.
when you look at the next slide, I think it
Was there a
is,
photograph before this one that we skipped over?
I don't know, go back.
Well, that was the one of
This was
the wood shop.
Okay. I
Yep.
wasn't sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we added all those boxes up top to run cords to power equipment. In the past, there was no power equipment. We don't have a photo of it, but there's also a whole bank of 3D printers, which the kids use to design plastics. It's a big part of the curriculum. And those each have their own cord that is running into a power surge. So it's not ideal. And this space too, I just want to emphasize these two gentlemen in this photo. John, who's seated at the computer, he runs data for the entire district. He is a district employee in our technology department who runs all of our data systems from that closet. You can't even see him when you go in there because it's such a lack of space. Yuri, that's standing near him, also repairs and works with all of the student Chromebooks and teacher computers. He fixes things across the district. So this is their main workspace for, more than 8 hours a day. And it's just, I would really like to upgrade that space for them. But again, these technologies didn't exist then. So a lot of this is just retrofitting closets and smaller spaces, office spaces that we've repurposed.
Next slide.
Oh, here's some of the classrooms. To the left of the door frame, that's what I was talking about. You see how there's a plug way up top, I'm not sure why, and then we're running cords down, and then we add in the access cords for the technology and the Wi-Fi and the Ethernet and the cable and all of that. So this is what a classroom typically looks like to get a bank of computers, teacher computer, and displays. So obviously that can cause some trouble.
So I'm going to go ahead and stop there because some board members have another obligation at another school event at 6:25. Wanted to leave a few minutes if there were any follow-up questions to middle school turf, anything anyone thought of.
Oh, actually, just one question on the security. Is it, you had the security slide.
Yep.
Is that different than the security project that's being?
No,
with
that's
small
the-
cap?
All the same.
Oh, so that's.
Yes.
So that's essentially kind of part of that bucket.
Yeah.
we're being cautious about what we select at the middle school. We're not going to add card swipes to doors because those doors may or may not be maintained, right? But as far as the security panel upgrades that we've discussed as a priority, that's happening. Lockdown
station.
pull stations are happening because those would be needed regardless. That was one of our very first and most important questions, was to make sure that we didn't do anything at the middle school that have to be undone with a renovation.
Any other questions? All right, our next meeting will be 1 week from today, November 3rd. I have a motion to adjourn.
To adjourn.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. All right, we're adjourned.